Google, eBay, Corona, Disney, Paramount, just to name a few. What's some of the customer feedback that you found from them?
So it's been good. They're very good clients and they demand, very high levels of service. By us being not as big as them, I think they're impressed that we're able to move so quickly. There's things that we're able to do very agile. We're very agile because we're not a huge company and because we don't have those levels of bureaucracy. So they get impressed because they're like, oh, they're smaller, but they're also mighty and smaller, right? So we get a lot of good comments on that. Now, for every client that you see there with those big name clients, those are great clients. But there's also clients that maybe you've never heard of that are just great mid-tier, smaller to mid-tier to upper mid-tier clients, size-wise, that are just really good clients also. And the one thing I noticed, no matter where we do orders, whether it's Canada, US, Germany, UK, Israel, Australia, everybody cares about their brand.
What do you know about the sock business? Well, my next guest knows quite a bit. He's actually the founder of Socrates, an industry leader of custom socks. And he's got a legendary list of clients, including the Miami Heat, Google, Corona, Disney, and many more. We spoke about all things entrepreneurship and what's it like being an observant Jew running a business. So enjoy my conversation with Sam, Shmuel, and Moses. Sam, Shmuel, Moses, my man, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to speak to you.
Of course, and excited to talk about some Socrates today. I really like the name of the company, how it's like Socrates, but Socrates. So definitely we'll get into a bit of that later. But happy that we were just talking off air a little bit. I know the pronunciation, but before we get into all that stuff and the stuff you were up to, I know from a young age you were all about business. So I have to ask, what was young Sam willing and dealing?
Yeah, no, I was always interested in business, always wondering, the value add of, how to sell something and how to provide a service. It's obviously started young, like just at a paper route, and doing the math of how much you can make, trying to take on more route and more homes, that was definitely a big thing. And then that kind of progressed. And when all my friends were playing baseball in the summer, I was umpiring and figuring out, how many games it would take to save up. And then, just like going after it and try to be a little bit more financially savvy. That was like really young. And then in high school, I went to like a private high school where it was like a boarding school kind of thing. And I convinced the school to give me the vending machines and the Coke machine. So like I was doing pretty well with those Coke machines and vending machines at that age, and kind of taught me how to offer a service and product and pricing. There was only so much people would pay at that time, a Coke or chips, especially for high school kids, so yeah, I was always very interested in it. And it was also just, I would always read, like I would read a lot of books on business. Back then the hot companies were Walmart and Coca-Cola, and the controversy behind Walmart was big back then. So I was always into reading books on, pricing and economics and marketing. Marketing was definitely big, and, accounting, even just some accounting, with my father. My father's an accountant. So just at the table, we'd always talk accounting, like I was 10 years old talking about like depreciating assets and stuff like that. So, no, it was always definitely a passion. My wife says there's not many people know what they want to do from such a young age, but I'm one of them, so I always knew what I wanted to do and I was focused on that. Now, I didn't know how it would kind of all play out, and I didn't know the road that I would go on to do that, but I knew that in some way I would probably be running a business, and I would probably be focused on hopefully, manufacturing a product and selling a product.
No, it's awesome that you knew from a young age and you were able to just hit the ground running. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was like there was this controversy with Walmart. What was going on with Walmart back then?
So that was like the mid to late 90s. And the big controversy with Walmart back then, and it's not as much now because, with Amazon and everything, was Walmart would basically open a store in these small cities and their prices were, so low, and their service was not the best necessarily, but that wasn't the issue. It was the pricing. And they would kind of hurt the local vendors, and they would hurt the local small businesses, like the small mom and pop convenience store would get hurt because Walmart's coming to town. And so a lot of people would try to keep them out. They would try to, picket or try to get the city to not zone them or do their best to keep the Walmarts out. Now, obviously they didn't succeed very well because Walmart expanded like an explosion. But that was a very controversial issue in the 90s and the early 2000s when I was a kid, and I was just reading about it and interested in it. But it's amazing to see how things change, like the controversies of the time back then are different now, and maybe they're still controversial, but it's just a different way that they're controversial. So also, Microsoft with their monopolizing model, like they were getting in trouble for that, like, so there was a lot of things going on that I was just reading about and taking note of, and things that I liked and things that I didn't like. But I was always into economics, like I'd go to the movie theater and I'd be like telling my parents, like, it's how do they justify the price? Like, how do they supply and demand? I know they have you here, but like, how are they justifying this crazy popcorn price? So there would be like, and I would read like a lot of information on that, like economics background and stuff like that, to understand why they're able to do that, so that was just as a young age. But yeah, there was definitely, it's interesting to see over time how the controversies change and how the interesting businesses change. All of a sudden, Walmart's not as interesting, but say Amazon and Apple are, and why are they interesting? And then maybe 20 years from now, we'll be talking about other businesses. So it's very interesting to see the progression.
Definitely. I think today the same issue that maybe Amazon is having, and Amazon, obviously one of the bigger competitors to Walmart, with them not having, much brick and mortar. On another note, they have, their Whole Foods and all that stuff, but for the most part, it seems like they're all about e-commerce.
Yeah.
So I think the big challenge now is the whole globalization of it, and you have something like Temu, which is probably losing money on products and services, but making money on selling data, which is conversation
Yeah.
for another day and another time. So it'll be interesting to see the dynamic of what moves forward there. But you mentioned that when you were younger, you were reading a ton of books. Was there one book that really stuck out to you, or one book that you really learned a lot from when you were younger?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have read, it would be probably over 50 times now, like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. Those are obviously the big ones. I read a book called The Impossible Just Takes a Little Longer by Art Berg when I was very young. And it's about a guy who obviously got paralyzed in an accident, and he wrote a book that's very inspiring about how he turned that into like a lot of positives in his life, and how he did great things regardless of that accident. So that was great, and it's just kind of teaches you the value of hard work and staying determined and being positive. So that was great, but I read a lot of just books on business, like, people would write books on Coca-Cola and I would just read it, or McDonald's, or, and I don't even eat McDonald's, but I was interested in reading about it because they were systems. I thought it was really interesting as a kid that a teenager could run a McDonald's that could do $3-4 million in business. To me, that was fascinating. How do you set up a business like that, right? Whereas the mom and pop shops, they can't even, even adults have trouble running it. What's the difference between these businesses? And it came down to systems and operations, and actually setting things up properly to scale. So that was really interesting to me. And those books kind of made an impact on me, and I just kept reading, whatever I can get my hands on.
So other than learning about, we mentioned this earlier, that $15 popcorn price, which should be a crime in its own, but that's, I guess, a conversation for another day as well. What were some of the harder lessons you learned about entrepreneurship, since you were getting into like a lot of these business books and trying to think about business from a young age?
I think what you learn quickly is that, reading books is not going to be enough. Like you would say, okay, I'm just going to read all the books. I'm going to come out and open a business. I'm going to know everything from the books. And maybe there are certain fields that you can do that, but probably not in business, right? So even in business school, like, I was immersed in business school for many, many years, and I was around other students who were also obsessed with business. And then all of a sudden we come out and it's like, okay, like, what are we? Like, we're businessmen? Like, what are, like, when they stamp as businessmen, we just go. So there's a lot of like on the job life experience that you just need to have to be able to run businesses successfully and to be able to grow businesses. And even then you're going to make mistakes. And even then there's going to be ups and downs. And even then it's very hard to be successful. So I learned very quickly that, like, you can read all the books you can, which is important. I am a big fan of reading good books. Especially on business, but even today I still do whenever I can. But it's like you can't replace that with world life experience, and it takes years and years and years. It just takes a long time to figure out what to do and how to do it well. And then when you figure it out, things change, and then you got to figure it out again. So that was kind of a wake up call. You can't just come out of business school and just open up a business and expect to be uber successful because you went to business school, because you read all these books, or because you expose yourself. You know, you're putting yourself in a good situation. You probably have a good shot at it. But at the end of the day, you're going to need a lot of life experience and a lot of business experience as you go to kind of like mine the battlefield over there with all the landmines that you could hit while you're building your business, you know?
I should take that 60 seconds for our conversation and send it to every M7 MBA school in the country where like
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, no, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna be like a mid-level manager, a C-suite executive. When I think just a lot of times, not to get too into it, but I think there's a lot of ego sometimes that people don't want to do the basic stuff. But the
Yeah.
reality is you have to do the basic stuff to be able to do like the high stuff or like the C-level stuff really, really well.
So there's a famous UPS commercial. I think it was in the early 2000s, and there's like you see somebody like a man in a suit in a warehouse, right? And he comes to the warehouse the first day, and it's his first day on the job. And one of the ladies there says, "Oh, okay, let me show you your job." And she takes him to the warehouse, and she says, "Here are the boxes. You're gonna have to pack the stuff." So the guy goes, "Pack the stuff, pack the boxes, and ship them. I'm a MBA. I don't. I'm." And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you're an MBA." She goes, "Let me show you how to pack the boxes." Because like all of a sudden, like you don't know anything. Like, oh, you're an MBA. Okay, I'll show you how to pack the boxes, right? So it kind of opens your mind up, and it's like you gotta like, you realize on your first day on the job and stuff, you don't know that much, and you just got to get to work. And it takes a long time. I have people work for me, and like, they've been working for 3 months, and they're just out of school, and they're kind of like, "Oh, okay, I've been with you for a long time." And I'm like, that's not a long time. There's people that work for many, many years, and then they learn a lot. So yeah, I think you have to just make sure everybody's on the same page of what experience looks like, and what consistency looks like over time.
Definitely. Unfortunately, 3 months for college kids seems like a long time. And
Yeah, they're
yeah,
like ready for raises, they're ready for bonuses, they're ready for, like it's like, okay, you're gonna have to spend a lot more time working a lot harder to get to where you want to get to. And that's not it just in Socrates, that's in any company that you're gonna go to.
yeah, that's life for sure. I think, a good way to summarize it, I think maybe you could learn from in books or in college, you can learn like the science of doing things. So certain accounting principles, certain finance stuff, certain marketing stuff. But I think the art you only really pick up with experience. And I think schools don't really teach you that.
Yeah, it's almost like the blend of all of them. So you might learn marketing, you might learn accounting, you might learn human resources, you might learn organizational behavior, and organizational effectiveness. And you might learn all of those things. You might know a little bit, but all of a sudden you need to gel all of these together into one working unit. That is where life experience and business experience is going to come in. And that, you learn how to make decisions, and you'll learn how to take risks, and you'll learn how to minimize risks to make sure that you don't get wiped out if you make a bad decision. So, or not even a bad decision, the right decision that just didn't work out in the end. So yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you just need the life experience to blend it all together and take these things and make it work and be successful in your business with it.
Definitely. I think probably for worse, I think we have a culture where people have like a lot of ego and expect a lot right away. And then you also have on the company side, when people make like a small mistake, there's like very swift action. I think people have forgotten that it takes some trial and error to really get things going.
Yeah.
Well,
And you
well,
see that. You see that in marketing. Like, you guy puts out one ad and he's like, "Oh, it doesn't work. Let's, go to the next, try something." I mean, usually ads take a campaign of ads. Like, so you need some patience with it. You need to have proper ways of measuring it. Like, because otherwise, most of the time, you might be trashing your ad too early before you've even measured the results properly, right? So, yeah, no, definitely, I do see that there's this instant gratification mentality, and that can hurt you in the long run. Sometimes maybe that can save you. It's like 50-50 in a way, but in a lot of ways, most of the time it's going to harm you because you're just making decisions too quickly without actual data or without actual insights. You're just like throwing something out there, and then making pivots too quickly.
yeah, hopefully companies can have a little more risk appetite in the future. But, also I guess a conversation for another day. But in regards to your story, after college, you actually had a stint in corporate America. I know you were all about entrepreneurship and business from a young age. Is there a reason you chose like the corporate path before jumping into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, no, I always wanted to go into the consulting world. I thought the consulting world was a great world for me. I'm always interested in businesses, and I wanted to see quite a bit of businesses. Now, the consulting firm that I was in was only for investment banks, so it was a very specific type of business. But, I didn't want to be an investment banker. I didn't want to be an accountant. I thought consulting to investment banks would be really, really good. I had a good appetite for that. It was a good opportunity, and I thought I still had a lot to learn in a structured environment versus going out on my own and trying to figure out the structure on my own at that point. I knew I wanted to go out on my own eventually. Now, the good thing about that firm that I joined, they're a large firm and they do consulting all over the world. They do have and they do hire entrepreneurial type people. So like, I was in the room with a lot of people who were entrepreneurial minded people. So that helped me because sometimes if you're in a very truly corporate environment and everybody's kind of like an employee and they're climbing the corporate ladder, which is great, you lose maybe your little bit of entrepreneurship, or it's hard to blend in with them. So it was definitely an entrepreneurial environment which I enjoyed, and it was definitely the kind of environment where it was a meritocracy. So the more you did, the more you earned, and the more you did, the more you grew over there. So I learned a lot. There was a lot of travel, there was a lot of work, worked crazy hours, getting in at 6 7 a.m. and leaving past 10 p.m. every day. So yeah, no, it was a very good. It was the most important thing, and I think Hormozy talks about this. It was a learning experience that they're paying you for, right? So it's like you're getting paid to learn a tremendous amount. So I look at that as a major positive in the beginning of a career, and I would suggest that to anybody who asked me, should they go straight to run a business or should they go and work for a little bit? If it was my kids or anything like that, I'd say try to get some work experience, try to learn within a proper structure, somebody who knows what he's doing, or some company that knows what they're doing, and then figure out how to do it, things on your own, some other business on your own.
Awesome that you got that experience in consulting and banking is definitely a rough ride to say the least. But to get to the golden question, how did you get into the sock game?
So it was a long road. So, obviously I was in the menswear business after consulting. We had retail stores, very high-end retail stores. It was a chain from Italy. We were bringing in the product from Italy. We were selling to executives who were obviously high income executives, generally male. And I saw this store that had hundreds of thousands of people walking by. And I really thought that it could be the kind of environment where more people could come into, not just this one demographic. So we introduced the socks, colorful socks, and it just took off. It just actually just went crazy. So all of a sudden, a store that was 40 50 people would walk in a day was getting 3 4 500 people a day, because these socks were just so accessible, and these socks were they just had a high demand. And then what happened was, because we were in the downtown financial district, companies started coming to us and being like, who makes these socks? And we were like, we make them ourselves, we're private label. And then they would ask us to make them for them to go to shows and to do for their employees and to do for their clients. And then we started to do that. The lady who works in my store is the manager. She had an art degree, so she started drawing the socks herself, and she started doing it on her own. And then we basically teamed up. I was the owner, and we teamed up. And then after a flood in the store, we decided full time we're just gonna go with the socks. We started a website. In 2018, and from 2018, from when we launched, it kind of really, really took off.
Got it. I'll get into that flood thing in a second. I'm happy you brought that up. But to backtrack a bit, reading a little bit about your story, and I know you just mentioned you used to run a high-end store. And, one of the things that most people can afford in a high-end store, as opposed to those like expensive suits, are, plain socks. So
Yeah,
I know I read in this article that you became kind of obsessed with the quality of them. And over
yeah.
time, you had trouble finding a solid manufacturer. So how did you, at the end of the day, I know you decided to kind of create them on your own, but how did you build that production process to create really high quality socks?
So we were already producing the neckties in Italy, and that's a whole world. At that time, that was a whole world. Making neckties in Italy was like very high quality stuff. And we would go to the factory where they're like 5 6 generation tie makers. So, you're talking great grandparents to great grandkids, that were making neckties. It was unbelievable. The level of detail that they put into the necktie and the love that they had to make that necktie was just different level. And the quality of the piece was very high. So we were already into Italian manufacturing. We were already kind of in love with it, and we loved it. So we decided that we were going to go to the city in Italy that specializes in socks. And we went to that city, and then we partnered with them. In the beginning, we were like not a huge partner. We were kind of small, but then it grew, and now all socks in their factory are produced with us. So the entire manufacturing process for that factory is a Socrates factory. So it's like a cool partnership. And that's what gives us the ability to move very quickly and to get speed on the jobs because we have control of the factory. Whereas a lot of the other people selling online are just dumping it into China, whatever, whenever they get to it, 25, 35 days. We're moving things in 5 to 7 days. So it's just a totally different environment. And it stays on the high quality, made in Italy, manufacturing where they're actually proud of what they're doing. It actually stayed there. So it was a huge lift for us to come to the market with this made in Italy 7-day turnaround time. There's some other benefits also, unlimited Pantone matching, and then the quality of Italy. So when we came to the market, we came in very.
Is the big difference, just to touch on that point for a second, is the big difference between manufacturing in somewhere like Italy or some high-end place in Europe versus somewhere like China or somewhere else, just the quality? Like, you notice that, in Italy, they pay attention to the quality of it, and it just happens to be much more superior than anywhere else.
It's the quality when you're doing normal runs. So if in China I put in an order for 25,000 pairs, the quality and is going to be pretty good. It's actually going to be very good because they're set up for these big runs. Okay. Now we're doing for companies also big runs. Okay. Like they can do 10,000 pairs, but a lot of the times we're doing 100 pairs, 500 pairs, 250 pairs of one design. So China, they're going to take 35 days to do that. It's not high priority for them. The quality is going to be okay. It's not going to be bad, but Italy is going to actually do these small run batches with a lot of care and detail. And it's going to come out really, really good every single time because that's how they're set up. So there's kind of like two different setups.
Mhm.
And there's nothing derogatory about either setup. There's nothing good or bad. It's just about a difference, but definitely for these smaller runs that we're doing, 500 pairs, 1,000 pairs, 1,500 pairs, where we need them very quickly, Italy has been the best solution for us and the best solution for the market. Like, imagine a company in the UK. We get a lot of business from the UK. They come to us. Why ship from China? It's far, and it's not only that. The duties is kind of messy. Here, Italy to UK, easy shipment. So it also centralizes us in the world to get the goods out wherever we need to get them to pretty quickly.
So it's one of those things, say, for example, if you're like the Reeboks of the world or the Nikes of the world who are producing like, thousands, if not millions of socks really
Yeah.
frequently, then it'd be good for it to use something like China. But for what you're doing, focusing on like really high quality, really great socks, it's better to have like Italian
Yeah.
manufacturing where they're like
It's
super
like
laser
it's
focused
like
on every detail.
Microsoft does 2,000 pairs. That sounds like it is a lot of pairs, okay, but it's not Nike making a black sock 3 million times, right? So it's a bespoke run. So when you're doing the bespoke aspect, what we're doing, it's a very specific run. This is really really well set up for that, and that's why the competition who are just putting these orders into China, it's just very hard for them to keep up with us because they're not set up for that. China doesn't care about these China factories don't care about 250 pairs. And they just not that they don't care, but it's just not part of their business model.
It's not their
So
main thing.
whereas Italy's like, oh, 250 pairs, we know what to do to get this out in 5 to 7 days. We have the yarn capability to match the color. We know how to get this moving. We know how to get the label. We know how to do everything. So it's very much a different process and it's totally different environment.
For sure. So back to the leak that you mentioned earlier, when you ran that high end store, above you was a restaurant, and in the restaurant business, a lot of stuff happens. And unfortunately, and then I guess fortunately, in your case, there was a leak, and everything got ruined. But I saw in an article that you said that looking back at that leak, it was the best thing that could ever happen for your business. Why was that?
Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time building up that store. We had a lot of pride in that store. That was a great store. We had customers from all over the city coming to us and really all over, even different countries coming to us. It was a great store and we were really into it. But what happened was when we had the flood, I say it was good for us because it mentally forced us to actually have to do something different versus staying comfortable in that store and then going outside the store, because there's two ways to get business. You either wait in the store and the people come to you, or you can go to them. And by having a flood, it forced us to go online, come up with a product of custom socks online with a system and a marketing plan and everything. And then it forced us to get that going while the store was being rebuilt. It took a whole year to rebuild it. So that did that. And then the custom business became much bigger than the store. So it kind of like was a kind of like a mentally a lucky break where it actually forced us to start doing different things and actually build a better business overall, you know, and then of course it saved us from COVID because during COVID, that business would have got wiped out anyway. Right.
Right. So it's something that happened prior to COVID, but made you guys COVID proof because you guys, when COVID came around, you guys were already like online. And honestly, the pandemic, silver lining of it, I guess a gold lining for you guys was a lot of people were at home and essentially companies wanted to still feel connected. So they just figured socks was a great thing to send to
Yeah, we were
people.
sending a lot of the kits to people's houses, individual kind of like gifts to their houses, and that was a different time. Definitely, the business was definitely down in 2020 from where it was in 19, but it obviously has recovered since then. But it was down, but not by much because we were doing different things. You know, we were sending it to the house, we were sending to client gifts to their house. Like companies still were giving the sock out, they were just giving it out in different use cases. You know.
So speaking about those clients, you actually have a legendary list of clients I looked at. Like I'm talking about Google, eBay, Corona, Disney, Paramount, just to name a few. What's some of the customer feedback that you've gotten from them?
So it's been good. You know, they're very good clients and they demand, you know, very high levels of service. By us being not as big as them, I think they're impressed that we're able to move so quickly. There's things that we're able to do very agile. You know, we're very agile because we're not a huge company and because we don't have those levels of bureaucracy. So they get impressed because they're like, oh, they're smaller, but they're also mighty and smaller, right? So we get a lot of good comments on that. Now, for every client that you see there with those big name clients, those are great clients. But there's also clients that maybe you've never heard of that are just great mid-tier, you know, smaller to mid-tier to upper mid-tier clients, size-wise, that are just really good clients also. You know, and the one thing I noticed, no matter where we do orders, whether it's Canada, US, you know, Germany, UK, Israel, Australia, everybody cares about their brand. You know, everybody. They care a lot about their brand. A guy who just a Pilates studio to Microsoft. Okay. So like they all care a lot about their branding and making sure that the sock comes out looking really nice and matching the colors and all this stuff. So whether it's a large company or a mid-sized company or a small company, my message to our team is that we have to take care of them all the same. We don't treat Google any better or worse.
So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Speaking about one client in particular, there was an article about you in Ami magazine. I have to shout out the author by Nasanal Gantz. And you said that your biggest order ever was actually 15,000 custom socks for the Miami Heat. How did you fill that order?
Yeah, so it was a great order. You know, it's the kind of order where they're giving them out to their season ticket holders and all their other kind of like high level relationships. The interesting thing about that, obviously, was that it was a time crunch. So we have to move very quickly. So what happens is, you know, the way we work is we have to assign a certain amount of machines based on how many pairs it is and based on how much time we have. So in that case, you know, other jobs would be finished up very quickly. And then we would clear machines out. You need about 10 to 15 machines to be able to do that in 7 days. So we're just able to do it very quickly, and then UPS picks it up. It's kind of the same as 100 pairs. It's just more machines and a few more people involved, right? So, and that's where the scale of the business comes in. It's all possible. It's just about getting the orders in and then organizing the orders properly on the manufacturing side. Thankfully, our Italian team they're very good. They're just very good at hitting the deadlines, and they're very good at taking these deadlines very seriously and then getting the boxes to UPS in the proper amount of time, but so that we have an extra 2-3 days on it, you know? So yeah, that order went off well. That order was a great order, but it's really about the organization and keeping in good communication with them. So the order just doesn't come in on day one, right? I mean, we're working on this order for weeks in advance. So the key is to stay in good communication with them and say, look, we do have a big order coming in. You know, you're going to have to start working timelines around this order now to make sure that we're in the place where we can do the order properly and then buy the yarn, get the labels, get everything going, you know?
So, you've come a far way from when you were, younger, from humble beginnings to right now having millions in sales. But thinking back to the early days, especially about when you're building something from nothing, what would you say was the hardest part about building Socrates from scratch?
I think the hardest part is just the marketing aspect of figuring out a way to actually get a constant flow of business. I think that's just the hardest thing to do. I focused a lot on the back end of the business, meaning the operations and making sure the systems were good and the making sure that the making sure that the processes were really good to make sure that if we did get 200 orders in a month, we were set up to handle them. Okay. And then I think we just really grew because we took care of every customer. We were really, really laser focused on the experience, making sure that any customer that does come to us, we take care of. And then that led to quite a bit of referrals to other customers. Taking care of the customer is the best way to go to get more customers. So we just were laser focused on making sure that our customers were happy, even if it cost us money. Like if we had to do something to make them happy that was going to maybe be a temporary loss in that regard, we would just do it and then really take care of them and really stand by them. And then we noticed that led to them referring us to their coworkers or their other departments. Like you think about Google as a client. Now Google, there's like hundreds of departments, so if you just take care of one department, they should move you to other departments. Okay, we call that in business like a land and expand campaign. You know what I mean? So you land in Google and then you expand in there. Yeah, I was really obsessed with the customer journey. I still am. If I see a customer journey that's not what I believe is great, then like I try to work with the project manager on our team to be like, how can we make this better for them? Because whether you're ordering 100 pairs or 1,000 pairs, whether you're a small company or big company, everybody wants to be taken care of and everybody wants their orders valued. So we just really, really put a lot of systems in place to do the orders properly and to make sure everybody's happy. Now, you're not going to make everybody happy all the time, but even for the customers who are not happy, how do we leave it that they don't leave with a bad taste in their mouth?
Definitely. It seems to be a common theme among successful companies, just companies focusing on the customer, and then
Yeah.
everything else kind of falls into place.
Yeah, usually that will happen. Like, and another thing is, as it's like a famous business school thing, right? It's always easier to get to get an order from your current client than to get an order from a new client, right? So take care of them. I've noticed sometimes in business, people are selling me things and then they're just disappearing, right? It's like, oh, that's weird. Like you were all engaged when you were selling me the product and then now you disappear. We try not to disappear. At least, we don't disappear definitely until the socks are delivered. And then we try to stay engaged with some content or some information or a thank you or a gift card or a gift, like something to just show them that we care about their business, because they could have chosen other companies and they could have chosen other good companies. So like, it's not like we're like the one company that's just 10 times better than everybody else. We're good and we're great, but there's other companies that are good also. So the fact that they chose us, we definitely appreciate that. And we got to communicate that we appreciate that by hard work and taking care of them. Sometimes there was a UPS box was kind of like missing, and my wife sees me on the phone at night finding the box and everything. And she's like, oh my goodness, like, so you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of orders and this one box is driving you crazy. And I'm like, yeah, because that one box to that one client is very important. And we gotta go all in to get that box back. So that's kind of like the mentality that leads to success, I believe.
So thankfully, you guys didn't need an MBA to send out that box. That's something
Yeah.
that's capable
Yeah,
of.
a lot of the stuff you learn in business school. Like I remember I spoke to my professors afterwards, like 10-year reunion or 15-year reunion. And they're like, oh, so the business school help you in building this company? And I'm like, it did. It's great. I can make a great spreadsheet and I can do all that. But some of this stuff is just common sense. Like, take care of the customer, reply in a timely fashion, like basic human basic stuff, right? Like, and I noticed that a lot of the competitors and other people in the market are just not doing that. They're just not responding quickly. They're just not taking care of the customer. They're just not being transparent with pricing. They're just not doing that. So it leaves the door open for people who are willing to do that to be successful.
Yeah, for sure. So on a more personal note here, you, like me, happen to be Jewish. I'm just curious, what role has religion played in your business and just your life in general?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have to be, I'm very I follow the Torah. So like obviously very honest in business. If anybody ever overpaid us or if anybody, would put in a PO that's not correct, we would obviously send it back and correct it. We're very careful that if we say we're sending 100 socks, we don't send 98, we send 100. So we're very careful with that, because that comes from just being honest with the scales almost. And kind of like mazel, right? Like we believe that good luck comes from acting properly, right? So that definitely leads us. A lot of the workers in the company are obviously not Jewish, but we obviously have a lot of respect for each other. We take care of each other. We respect their holidays. They respect our holidays. So yeah, no, it definitely plays in every single day because it's there's not one day that we don't think about it. So I think it's a great benefit to the clients. I think it's a great benefit our employees and us, and obviously the other employees who are Jewish as well. So yeah, no, it definitely plays a big part, and we definitely care a lot about it. But at the same time, we don't turn it into like that's all it is. Like it's not just a Jewish company. It's a company that services everybody, and there's a lot of different people involved. And yeah, we kind of like look at the big picture as well.
Definitely. It's like a way of life for you to live and like for your fellow, Jewish employees, but it's a company that services everybody. And that's just like a guidebook you go for going about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we just want to do the right thing. Like, any religion, we just want to do the right thing and put good into the world and be honest about what we're doing and go to sleep at night knowing we never cheated anybody. I never wanted to be part of a business that has to cheat people to make money. I'm just not interested in that. And this is not. And this is actually bringing some joy to the world. People are having fun with it. So it's like we have customers who are, they pay quite a bit of money and they're just like, Sam, this was fun. This was exciting. We got the socks and we're happy. So I kind of like that my livelihood is actually based in that. I always wanted to be in the wedding business more than the funeral business if I had to be in one of those businesses, right? Like just bring some joy, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with the funeral business. It's a necessary need. It's a big mitzvah actually. But for me personally, I just want to be around happy people when I go to work. So I actually find that Socrates has that. It's fun, it's cute, it's like at the same time it's professional, but it's like an easygoing thing where people are not stressed out. Like it's not like a $250,000 SaaS buy and they're like all nervous and they're the bosses and everything. So it actually does bring a lot of happiness, and I do enjoy that. It's fun, and my kids love it. The kids just love it. They come to the office, they like to see all the new socks. Like we did a job for Dr. Pepper. My kids like obsessed with the Dr. Pepper. So it's kind of a cool brand, and it's something to be proud of for sure.
I love that. I want to ask on a parting note here, and this is back to the religion point. Do you think that there's a relationship between giving charity and success in business?
Yes. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that the more you give, the more that it actually comes back to you, and it actually helps both the giver and the receiver. And I actually think it helps the giver even more. That's definitely something that we're very focused on at Socrates. We give a lot of socks to homeless shelters. We actually we just donate a lot of money to charity, as you know. Obviously, 10% would go to charity. And we're really focused on it, and we actually care a lot about that. And then I think that actually creates a better environment and better employees and better clients, and everything's just a lot better and easier. And it's not something that we go around, shouting from the rooftops. We don't need to do that, but it's just something internally. I do believe it helps very much, and it actually helps you it helps you feel good about the business that you are doing and the success that you're having. It's not just a selfish success. It's kind of like a giving success, which I think is important.
Definitely. I think there's a saying, you make a living by what you take, but you make a life by what you give. So I
Right.
definitely echo that. But Sam, thanks again so much for taking the time. Awesome to hear about Socrates and all the fun stuff you guys are doing. Always love talking to these fun, unique, quirky businesses. And it sounds like you guys have been doing awesome. And God willing, you guys will just keep going on that roll. And Sam, thanks again for taking the time.
Sure. Yeah. If anybody wants to reach out, we can reach us at socratescustom.com. We'd love to hear from you. And again, thank you for having me, and much success to you and your podcast and on your career as well.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Samuel Shmuel Moses. Thankfully, we just surpassed 30,000 views on YouTube, and we're starting to grow on all platforms, but we still need your help. So if you've learned anything or found any part of the podcast valuable, please subscribe to the show. Subscribing helps immensely with the quality and lets us give you guys a better experience. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.